Grief is so much more than deep sorrow and pain. Welcome to the Stayin' Wild and Well podcast. My name is Rin, and my greatest accomplishment is being alive. Here we talk about life's journey, the ups, the downs, the in-betweens, all things mental health, body, mind, and spirit. We share wild stories and keeping your wild alive while staying well. Grief is like strange. Grief can be so weird. And the reason I'm saying this so light is because moving through my own grief, I couldn't help but notice I was showing up in the weirdest, strangest ways outside of my character. And then I had a client session, and of course the universe does this. I always end up saying things that I'm supposed to hear, or this client is coming to me and I can reflect on myself. And I was like, wow, we are talking about grief. I had a client moving through some grief, and I was like, I also want to tell you that your grief can show up in the strangest ways. And when I started describing some of the ways that grief had shown up for me to my client, they were so relieved. And I thought, I have to share this today. I have to share this today with you because if you are moving through grief and you see these weird behaviors popping up and you're like, what is going on? Or there's some self-judgment there, because believe me, I had some self-judgment, you guys. I had some self-judgment because I'm like, this isn't who I am. I'm acting in a way of like existential ways that are not even like who I am. Example, driving without a seatbelt. I mean, I'm gonna go into this. I wrote out a list here for you in ways that grief has shown up for me in the strangest ways. And I think that these might be ways that you can relate. And I'll give you a little bit of back end, I'll give you a little bit of examples so you understand what I'm talking about. Okay, let's start out with brain fog. Just kind of feeling like I was in a cloud. Like I would be present, but I'm not really here. My memory's not really great. I'm speaking, but I feel very robotic. I feel foggy. I feel like I'm walking on a cloud. My brain even like feels heavier. Everything feels kind of hazy, almost like disassociation in many ways, because you're here, but you feel like you're not all at the same time. So your brain is kind of foggy, your memories aren't very clear, and it literally can manifest itself as a feeling that you feel within your brain. Like you actually feel it. Let's go right into disassociation. I would be in a conversation, and all of a sudden I would be like this, zoning out. And I might still be talking, but I'm not looking. I'm like looking the other way. Or I'd be in mid-conversation and it's like I forgot what I was saying. Completely disassociating and going somewhere else. And this is the brain's way of protecting itself. So if this is happening to you, I don't want you to be alarmed. I've had clients be like, I think I need to go to the hospital, SabriNa. I think I need to go see a doctor. When our brains disassociate, it's often because our experience is so painful that it's trying to put us somewhere else so we can stop feeling what we're feeling. So thank you, brain. Thank you, body, for showing up in the ways that you are. This isn't really helpful right now, but thank you. And we're going to provide grace to ourselves. So disassociation, brain fog are ways that grief can show up a little bit strange, and you might not understand what's going on, or might look at yourself like there's something wrong with you, but really it's the body trying to protect itself. Being frozen. I've described this in other videos where I was just like frozen in time. There were moments where there's like 2 dishes in the sink, and I'll never forget it. It's like 3 hours goes by and I did nothing, and I'm wondering, what the heck, where did time go? Or sitting in my car, having a day off, like actively taking a day off because I'm like, you know what? I need to just relax. I'm going to go read a book. And then it's suddenly 5 o'clock and I've been sitting in my car all day and I did nothing and I don't know where the time went. It's like things get frozen in time, going in bed and not being able to move, wanting to go for a walk but not having the ability to. So you're kind of frozen in time. And we see this often with grief because there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So that brings me to fight. You might have like this anger within you that's just coming up and you're picking fights with people for no reason. You're asking yourself why you're doing this. You're in a state of the fight of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Flight is like, I'm out of here. You might pack your stuff and you might just be gone. Turn off your phone. I've done that. I used to never do that. My phone's being turned off. I'm putting it on airplane mode. I'm putting it on do not disturb. I'm out of here. You might take your bags, might go into a forest. You might even go on a random trip. Flight, bye. See you later. I don't want to feel what I feel. I am gone. And then we spoke about freeze. And then there's fawn, which also can pop up, which is very strange, but also not when you look at it from the perspective of the way the brain is trying to cope and move through things. Fawn is when we go into people-pleasing mode. So you might find yourself wanting to distract yourself by people-pleasing, acts of service, doing things for others, distracting yourself by showing up for others versus facing yourself in a way to, again, cope and move through what you are going through. So these are just other strange ways: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And that's because the nervous system is so shaken, it's just trying to look for a solution. In fact, all of these weird, strange behaviors I'm going to mention are not so strange at all. It's our body's way of trying to move through the grief that we are feeling in that moment. Oh, short fused. This one was big for me. It was like suddenly I was like irritated and short fused with everything. Like the littlest thing would bother me and I would just snap so easily. Your tolerance for things is much more smaller. Your tolerance for things is smaller. I'm just so excited. Your tolerance for things is smaller. The reason I'm excited, you guys, is because when I recognized that grief shows up in these ways, it's a breath of fresh air. You don't feel like you are going crazy anymore, and you don't feel so abnormal. So I hope that you could take this in for what it truly is, and if you're judging yourself, to kind of remove that judgment. Okay, back to what I was saying. You might also get bursts of like hyperactivity. And this often happens because we've been bottling our emotions inside. We've been holding back what we are feeling. Maybe you are at work and you can't show your emotions. You can't show your sadness. And this energy needs to go somewhere. So all of a sudden you're hyper and you feel like you need to do something. There's this burst of energy within you. And while being on that topic of burst of energy, you might also notice that emotions flood out of nowhere. So you might start laughing out of nowhere. You might start crying out of nowhere. You might just get this sudden feeling of anger, like these emotions that have been bottled up just kind of burst out randomly in places that maybe you don't want them to show up. Wanting to scream. This was a big one for me as well, where I would be just sitting there and everything inside of me feels like I just need to scream and release and get it out. In which case, do it. Maybe don't do it in a room full of people, but I mean, like, I went to the forest and I let it go. Like, I just screamed it out. Sit in your car, roll up the windows, go for a drive. I always say to my clients, I'd rather that energy be released than stored within you, because stored energy causes illness within, causes disease within, causes blockages of your chakras and your emotions. If you feel it and you feel like you want to do it, sometimes you just need to release it and let it out. Another one is body twitching. Sometimes we have energy stored within the body and we might notice our body twitches or makes weird movements, because this energy is living within us. And grief is such a heavy emotion that comes with a lot of energy and it gets stored in different parts. This also leads to sleep changes. Perhaps you are having challenges with sleeping. You might be waking up multiple times throughout the night. Maybe you can't shut your brain off to actually fall asleep, or the opposing side, you're sleeping much more because you're so depleted that your body just needs the rest and it's just choosing to sleep. So you might not be waking up as early as you normally do. You might not feel as motivated as you normally are because your body is needing to go into this space of rest. Again, we are not judging what the body is going through. We are holding space for whatever it is that we are moving through as the grief is showing up and as we are moving through the grief within our bodies. Reckless, self-sabotaging. This is the part that I was talking about where I was like, what am I doing? I'm going to own it, you guys, especially because of the way I am with my clients. If I have a client watching this, they're going to be like, really? Because I am the first to tell my clients not to do the behaviors that I'm about to speak to. And in fact, I was even being hard on myself about these behaviors. Okay, so I was choosing to eat energy bars, protein bars. I was having energy drinks. I was drinking protein shakes. I was driving without a seatbelt and not caring. And I was going to bed later and getting less sleep. I wasn't drinking my water like I was supposed to be. Why do all these things matter? Okay, a couple reasons: the self-sabotaging and the recklessness. I think when we're moving through grief, we can get to a space where we're like, I just don't care. I don't care. You just don't have the energy. But another thing is like, as our appetite changes, which I'll get into in the next point, you are looking for dopamine. Your brain is looking for anything to feel better and to create energy. Well, if I'm choosing the protein bar over eating my lunch, there's a good chance that there's a craving there and it's fulfilling a short need or desire to feel good. Because of course, if I'm going for the protein bar, I feel good for like 5 seconds, and then I'm like, oh, I'm still hungry. I probably should have eaten my proper meal. Energy drinks, well, I was just so depleted emotionally, physically, and trying to stay awake that I was having energy drinks, which in turn would increase my anxiety, which was a perpetual cycle. And again, like from your holistic nutritional perspective, as I am, I know that the ingredients aren't good. I know the ingredients aren't good. And I'm the first one to say, read the ingredients of the things you are consuming if you want to feel good and you want your body to feel good. I was consuming shit, you guys. I was consuming stuff that like I would never consume. And then driving without a seatbelt, I'm like, what are you even doing right now? This is not like you. So you might find you are showing up in ways that are outside of your character, that might feel self-sabotaging and just strange. And again, this is the body's way of searching for that dopamine. It's not wanting to care about the things it normally does because it's overstimulated, it's oversaturated with what you're feeling. Food and appetite changes. You might notice you are more hungrier than usual. You might notice you are going for the sugary, salty foods because you're getting that dopamine hit, that feel-good hormone. Or you might notice you're not hungry at all and you just don't have the energy, and it's taking you more time and energy just to bring yourself to the fridge to pick out something to eat. And I noticed both. I noticed there were times where I was going for that dopamine hit, that emotional eating, that feel-good, and also not having an appetite at all, and it taking so much energy just to nourish my body. So you might notice these changes. No motivation. You might not be motivated to do the things that you normally do. So perhaps it's going to the gym, going for walks, hanging out with friends, going to work, completing tasks. You might be procrastinating. The motivation that you normally have that's instilled within you is just not there. You might notice that guilt pops up as well. And the guilt often pops up from feeling different emotions. One of the things my clients have been speaking with me about, and I've had multiple clients speak about this guilt feeling, so I feel it's so important to talk about, is that when you are feeling moments of happiness as you move through your grief, may that be a loss of a family member, may that be your own personal grief, maybe a relationship ended, like there are many reasons we have grief, as we know. When you feel joy, there's guilt about feeling joy because a part of you feels like you should still be feeling the grief that you are moving through and not understanding that grief and joy can dance together. You might have memories that stop you from doing the things that you would normally do. I know that going for walks at one point were really challenging for me because it was connected to somebody in my life that was no longer in my life, that everything that I saw outside of me was reminding me of that person. It was just too painful to endure. It was too painful to do those things because of the memories. On the opposing side, you could be sitting in a room having a conversation and a memory hits you, and suddenly you are filled with an emotion, which could be happy, sad, mad. There are so many different emotions that could pop up. And again, it's leaving space for all of those emotions to come up. knowing that you need support, but not knowing what you need. So on one side, you know that you need support, you know that you want someone around, you're feeling this feeling within yourself, it's awful, but you don't know how to articulate what you actually need. Again, these are all strange ways that grief can show up for you. So I share this with you today because if you are moving through grief of any sort, and there are different things and different themes, different emotions, different feelings popping up in your body that you feel are a little bit outside the ordinary, what I want you to know is that these are all ways that your brain is trying to cope and move through what you are going through. Often it is to distract you and pull you away from what you are feeling. And other times it's ways that are trying to help you out and help you move through the process of grief. Grief is not linear. It doesn't present itself in just one way. If there is like some strange way grief is showing up for you that I haven't mentioned, I'd love to hear about it. And also just to hold space and compassion for yourself, that if you are moving through grief and it is showing up in ways that maybe you're not so proud of or you don't quite understand, holding space and allowing it to move through you is your best way to heal. It is the best way to move through it and allow it. Again, I want you to know and acknowledge that grief doesn't just go away. Grief can live within us for years to come. What we do with grief is we learn to move forward. We learn to provide ourselves with self-compassion. We learn to generate connection. We learn to move forward because life is worth living. To not judge ourselves and to hold space for all the weird things that grief does to show up in our bodies, recognizing it's just a way to help us move through what we are going through.